The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Comito and Steve Gravel. Presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.
Mike, it's good to see you again. Of course, it's another episode of The Unlikely Innovators. Mike, if I were to say to you, or maybe some of your friends in the Sudbury community, or indeed across Northern Ontario, or even across Ontario, if I were to say some things like giant whale skeleton, or the cavern, or the waterworks, what might you think comes to mind?
Well, I mean, I think I know where you're going with this, Steve. Are you talking about Science North?
Well, of course, it's Science North. And today we have the new CEO of Science North, which is Sudbury's and Northern Ontario Science Center, Ashley Larose, and we had a great chat with her.
Yeah, no, I think we could have geeked out probably a lot longer on some of those exhibits. I mean, I was trying to like rack my brain thinking about all the exhibits that I patronized when I was a kid, and I think we did cross a few of them off the list, but yeah, it was such a pleasure to talk to her. And again, I think what really stuck out for me is we knew that, you know, she's been at Science North for the last 16 years, but I just thought it was really cool that she went to Science North as a kid, and she said only one time. And that's kind of when she got introduced to all these things that she was thinking about in her head, all the questions she had, that was actually science that she was thinking about and the process that she was thinking about. And that was kind of crystallized to her in talking to a Bluecoat. And then she became a Bluecoat and is now, I guess, in charge of all of the Bluecoats as the incoming CEO of Science North. So I think as you kind of said in the outro to Ashley, is just, I think, you know, Science North is in great hands under her leadership, and we're really excited to see what her and Science North is going to come up with in the next coming years. Yeah.
And I think without further ado, we'll hand it over to the Bluecoat in Chief, Ashley Larose, CEO of Science North.
So we're now pleased to be joined by Ashley Larose. Ashley is the incoming CEO at Science North, Canada's second largest science center and Northern Ontario's most popular tourist attraction. Ashley joined Science North in 2006 and has held various leadership roles throughout her 16 years with the organization, including Senior Manager of International Sales, Director of Customer Relations and Business Development, and most recently as the Director of Development, overseeing the development and implementation of giving programs and major fundraising initiatives benefiting all catalysts of Science North's strategic plan. Ashley received her honors degree in biology from the University of Waterloo and completed her Master's of Science at Laurentian University. She is a passionate scientist who spent the earlier part of her career working as a research scientist in cities across North America. Her master's degree saw her bringing cutting-edge genomic techniques to the world-renowned freshwater research that was already underway. And in her downtime, Ashley enjoys being outdoors with her son and husband, and is a skilled mixologist and pizza connoisseur. And we're now so happy to have her join us on the Unlikely Innovators. Ashley, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is just awesome. I really appreciate it.
We're looking forward to getting into some of these questions with you. We will go back to the mixologist and pizza connoisseur questions, but we'll save those for the end. Yeah. But one of the questions we always ask our guests when they come on the podcast is kind of, you know, their career path. And we'll get into exactly some of the stuff that you've done at Science North. But the one that I always like to open with is did you always see yourself in this role? Were you always drawn to science as an early age, or was it something you kind of found later in life?
Yeah. And so I grew up in Northern Ontario. I grew up north of Timmins in a tiny little town called Smooth Rock Falls. So you can probably picture that there wasn't a ton to do there, but what we did have a lot of, obviously, was the outdoors. So we were outdoors kids. We loved to figure out how things work and how they interact with each other. And that's the earliest that I can remember of sort of always being curious. I was definitely that kid that drove my parents crazy, or anyone around me, with the why. Yeah, but why is that like that? And why does this do this? And so I think we hear that a lot in people who are in the kinds of fields that we are. We're really curious. And that's such a great quality to have. So always interested in figuring out how things are connected. But it was actually an engagement with a Science North Bluecoat when I was about 10. Where I realized that curiosity was matched by the word science. Like, that's what science was. This thing that you're curious around, that has a word, that has a name, and that's what science is. And that's the first time that I can kind of remember thinking, oh, maybe that might be something that I want to know more about. And then the other really great thing to happen on my path was a really incredible science teacher in high school. So tiny little high school, 40 kids, like 5 kids in my graduating class. So the teachers at that school were really special. That was, if you were willing to work in a school that small, you're probably, really a passionate teacher. And I had that in my science teacher. And so we did lots of environmental science with him, lots of outdoors, being out in the field. And I remember the first time looking at like a pond water sample under a microscope, and like, bingo, this is what I want to do. And then I told my family that I would take biology in undergrad, and they went like, what will be your job? Because that's not really how it worked back then. Like, you went to school to do a job. I'm sure you can probably relate to that. And here I was, this kid saying, I don't know, I'll figure it out. Like, I want to learn more. I'm thirsty and curious and hungry to understand how the world works. So like, trust me, I'll figure it out. But this is not where I thought that was gonna land me. But so yes, always curious, always drawn to science. But certainly this was not the sort of outcome that I could have envisioned when I was a kid.
Yeah, and it seems that you may have figured it out now in your current role. When we all start working for, medium and large enterprises, at least I never think, someday I'll be the CEO of that place. When you started working at Science North in 2006, at admittedly a more entry level position than the CEO role, did you ever imagine that you'd now be talking to us as the new CEO?
1000% not. So prior to joining Science North, I was a research scientist. So I was a practicing scientist in the field, working on the West Coast. And ultimately my northern roots pulled me back and said, okay, it's time to come back to the north. And I thought, okay, where does at the time, a female scientist work in Sudbury? And I remembered engaging with Science North and going, well, that might be fun. And the first time that I got to engage a visitor in talking about science is when a light went off for me, saying, wow, I way prefer talking about it than doing it, and getting people excited about it. So could I have imagined CEO? No. Could I have imagined a long career? Yes. I remember telling my family, like, oh, I met my people. Science center people are my jam. They are, we love our subject matter, and a lot of us are experts. We are subject matter experts with science degrees. But it's all about getting people excited and connected to science and the world around them. That really gets us going. So I started off as a Bluecoat. And in fact, my first job was very glamorous. It was to travel Northern Ontario in a van with bins in the back. And I visited schools, and I got to be the Bluecoat in the schools, total rock star moment. Because when you come into those schools, like, you could be anyone. And then kids are pumped, that class is different that day. But when you show up with bins of really cool equipment, and you seem to know what you're talking about, and you're wearing a lab coat, like, wow. That was awesome. And I knew I would stay in the field, but certainly could not have imagined that I would get to lead the organization. That was unfathomable.
Yeah, when you showed up at those schools, it was even better than the days that they wheel the TV and VCR in, right?
Yeah. I used to, at one point we had, when we still do, our team still travels with it. We have this portable inflatable planetarium, and it's super cool. And for a lot of these kids, they will never make it to Sudbury to see our bricks and mortar planetarium. So this was a really special experience. But of course, I'm a biologist by background, and I can learn a lot. But whenever I would do the planetarium stuff, I would do a pretty good spiel, and then I would just brace myself that they wouldn't ask any questions. So we are subject matter experts, but we're adaptable too.
I keep thinking back to when you said that you had that moment when you were a patron at Science North talking to a Bluecoat and realizing what science was, and it kind of clicked for you. So I think even obviously I was thinking about the full circle moment of you having that, and then taking on the role you have now. But I think ultimately being on the road as a Bluecoat, talking to the students that you did, that was the full circle moment, right? Because that's kind of what you had. So what I was going to ask you initially was, you know, you've been at Science North now for 16 years, so certainly you've seen a lot of changes over that. But now that we know that you've also, you know, visited Science North as in your younger days as well, like maybe we could expand the question to not only the past 16 years, but like what are some of the notable changes you've seen at Science North in your life? We could say that.
Yeah, so I visited our bricks and mortar location once as a kid. And so I have, you know, not great memories of that, but man, I remember having fun. And I remember getting called up as a volunteer in our Discovery Theater, because you can probably imagine, if I'm like this as an adult, imagine what I was like as a kid, and you would be right. So I do remember that. Frankly, I wouldn't say, here's what hasn't changed, and that is the interaction between Bluecoats. Our Bluecoat scientists are our biggest asset, and our real value proposition, even in the field. You won't really find another science center in the world that has the ratio of Bluecoats to visitors like we do. And that's because we believe in the power of that personal interaction. So in the field, some of the evolutions we've seen is, you know, a little more automation, a little more sort of visitors can guide their own experience. That's not something you'll really see here. And I don't ever predict changing, because our Bluecoats are our biggest asset. So that's something that hasn't changed. Of course, the way we engage our visitors has to keep pace to their expectations. You know, where before we could have put a VR headset on the table and had that be the exhibit, now they have them in their home. So what is it that they're getting from us, right? We have to meet and exceed the expectations of our visitors in really bringing them something they can't get anywhere else. So you would have seen 10 years ago, I might have said, wow, you know, we're introducing virtual reality. That's not enough. Even 10 years later, that's not an exhibit, and the equipment can't be the exhibit. So really the innovations that we've seen are all being driven by our visitors' expectations, and, you know, changes and evolutions in science. I mean, even if you just look at the pandemic as an example, the way we communicated about it at the beginning is vastly different than how we're communicating now. And we need to keep pace with that to properly serve our visitors. So really, at the end of the day, any innovations you see are really to make sure that we're giving our visitors an incredible experience that they can't get anywhere else.
Well, and I think, gosh, I talk to anyone still, like on the street or at a party or something. Science North still has such a, like, it's still so compelling, you know, the experience. And you started talking about it, but I think if I were to guess, the secret sauce must be the Bluecoats then. If that's what keeps people coming back time and again, like multiple times in the summer, that's got to be it, right? Could you talk a bit about, and if you know too much about it, but that seems like a deliberate decision to the Bluecoat program to make that a compelling experience. Could you talk a bit more about those Bluecoats?
Yeah, it's how we keep people coming back, because really every visit, even if the exhibits stay the same, your experience could be different each time. And our Bluecoats are really skilled at understanding which level at which to engage our visitors. So they may spend 30 seconds with you to just say, oh yeah, the porcupine is over there. Or they may spend an hour with you and say, oh, you really like porcupines. Okay, well, let me tell you, you know, everything, and let's have a conversation. And they have the ability to gauge that themselves. It's not sort of destined from leadership to say, you have to spend this much time with each visitor. They're so skilled at communicating and at understanding at what level they need to come in with each visitor. And that's really special. Even in our industry, the term Bluecoat is very much known to be a Science North brand and part of our secret sauce. In fact, one of my favorite stories, I was at an international conference in the US somewhere, and it was pouring rain, and I may have stole someone's cab, and he climbed in the other side, and it was very clear that he was, you know, not from North America. And it turned out we were both going to the convention center. So we deduced we were both there for the convention. And I said, oh, you know, where are you from? And he said, oh, I'm from Kuala Lumpur. The science center there is called Petroscience. We know them very well. And he said, and you? And I said, oh, I'm from Science North. And he said, oh, Bluecoats. And I can't describe it any better than that. So it's, yes, it's something that we're really proud of here in Sudbury, but I think it's really cool for people to understand that it is a globally recognized style and brand. And to your point, it really is our secret sauce.
Yeah, I would say it's I've had some great experience with them. I think for my daughters right now, the most compelling thing is Maple the porcupine. But nevertheless, again, the Bluecoats are always fantastic. Every time we go to either Science North or Dynamic Earth, they'll come right out of their way. I think we've been even on rainy days, or not even rainy days, hot days when nobody else is there. You're the only one there, maybe in one of the exhibit halls, but they'll come right over and make sure that if you had any questions or they want to do a demo with the kids. So yeah, they are really great.
Yeah, we love them.
But on that note, I'll want you to maybe take a journey with me on this question, because I don't know if what I'm about to say makes sense or not. This was kind of a thought that Steve and I had as we were kind of going back and forth. But, for me, I moved to Sudbury when I was 15 years old, but I had gone to Science North like many times as a kid, living in different parts of Northern Ontario and even Southern Ontario, because my parents, went to Laurentian. They lived here initially, and then we moved to London, went around the province, but kept coming back because I had grandparents that lived in Onaping. So Science North was kind of a fixture in my childhood. And now that I have kids of my own, I'm taking them to Science North the way that my parents took me to Science North, but I'm also taking my parents to Science North with my kids. And in my mind, I just think that that's a unique thing for a community, that you don't really have an asset like that where you can bring 3 generations, sometimes 4 generations of people together year round, because we have memberships as well. So am I out to lunch in thinking this, or is this actually in fact a unique community asset that Sudbury should be proud of?
It's by design, Mike. So you're absolutely, you've nailed it, and you've uncovered our little secret here. So no, you are absolutely correct. And it's actually something that's fairly common in a well-designed, what we call a cultural attraction. So when you can offer something, so I'll back it up and I'll tell you the theory of it, because I geek out over this stuff. Like visitor studies is so fascinating, and it's a well-developed field that we've played a big role in. But I'll tell you the science behind what you're feeling. So when people make the choice to come to a place like a science center, there are 5 main different motivators of why someone might choose to do that. So as a parent, you're usually playing the role of a facilitator, right? This cool thing is here, and you want to facilitate your kids having a really cool experience. You'll probably get something out of it, but it's more so via your kids. It's sort of, you've played that role. When you look at someone like your parents, possibly, yes, they may not be facilitating, but they're probably getting something out of watching their grandkids enjoy. But they may also be, the experience seekers and explorers are another visitor motivator. So they're looking, or a hobbyist. So, maybe they love to garden and they come here and they learn more about gardening. They're sort of deepening their knowledge of something that they already have. Or they're just looking for a really cool experience. So anyone who walks through the door falls typically under one of the 5, what we call visitor motivators. And that's why you can all walk out of here sort of feeling satisfied, because we met whatever need you walked in with, because of the way that we've designed our experiences. And the same with that's where again, our Bluecoats come in as the secret sauce, is if you are that expert or that hobbyist, they can, give you as much information as you want to know, and really deepen the knowledge that you already have. So it is really by design that we create experiences to satisfy all 5 visitor motivators, so that everybody leaves happy. And it is a hallmark of a cultural attraction. You're not crazy.
Well, I'm glad that there was some science behind that, and that wasn't just Mike streaming his consciousness and hoping that the question stuck. So that's good. That's great.
Yeah, we actually love when we hear people sort of verbalize this thing that we know, and then it's like, yes, we did it.
Yeah, it's a good check for sure. I think it reminds me so much of, and I think I'm maybe paying another compliment, but Mike, I think you were there when we saw one of the gentlemen that used to be part of the Imagineers team at Disneyland. And they talk about how, this doesn't happen by accident, right? There's there's a thought process behind this, but it should seem like an accident to the experiencer, right? That this, you don't see the sort of puppet strings behind the entire experience. You're just there to enjoy the experience. So I know I felt that way going to Science North even as an adult. Like just a super dialed in experience. I want to geek out with you. I want to take you back on some exhibits. So we played this game in our office the other day because we're all about the same age here, and just thinking like, what exhibits have you thought of? Like, especially we could always say, people like, shouting into that thing up at the IMAX and hearing their voice come back. But what exhibits in the past have stuck out? I remember going into this giant brain exhibit where you'd walk in and it's a huge brain
Oh,
when
yeah.
I was a kid. And someone else, mentioned something else. If I were to ask you, what are some exhibits that you keep hearing about even 16 years later, at the brick and mortar site? What are some of those, just to have a bit of fun?
Yeah. So a really fun thing happens when you tell people you work at Science North. So they want to tell you their favorite exhibit, or they want you to check their nature exchange point balance on the second floor. So those are the like behind the scenes things that people want to know. One of the things that we do here is, again, because science, we actually keep a list, and we call them hives, HIVES, and that stands for high impact visitor experience. These hives are the exhibits that if they go down or if something happens to them, we will hear about it. And that means that if they go down, it's all hands on deck to get them back up and running. So I can give you some examples of those. One is the bed of nails.
Yeah.
If that bed of nails goes down, you will see it in our visitor comments that day. Like, really cool, but really sad that I would have given you 5 stars, but I gave you 4 because your bed of nails was out of order. So bed of nails is a hive. That is just one of those things that we'll never get rid of. The racetrack is another up on the 4th floor. Yeah, we love the racetrack. That's not going anywhere ever. So those are sort of the classic Science North. Oh, the sprint track, where you launch yourself at the wall on the 4th floor at the end of so that one as well. So those are the classics, right? They'll never go out of style. People love them. And the best, so Science North turned 38 this year, and it is really rewarding. So to your previous question, Mike, when we see parents come back with their kids and engage in the way that they remember engaging with their parents, and even better, of course, if the parents are there as well, there's something super special about that. Or being able to say like, oh, well, when Dad was here, I did it in this long, it's so awesome to see that memory come back. And then of course there is the how tall will you be?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that has to be a hallmark, right? Because I could think of so many people who said, well, Science North told me I was going to be 6'2", and I didn't make it that far, but I'm close.
Yep.
It's the best.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then some of our colleagues too, just to these aren't hives, I'm sure, but these are some of the other ones we heard were obviously the whale skeleton. I mean, that's like,
oh yeah,
not that you interact with it. At least I don't think you're supposed to interact with it. But then
not yet.
yeah. Oh, really?
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. And then the dunk tank.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's still around, but
no.
The other one though, yeah.
The other one that I remember as a kid too, and it's similar to the sprint track, was there was a staircase, I guess where like on the 4th floor, right? And you would run up to the top of the stairs and run back down. It would calculate something for you but I think that's one of the things.
The dunk tank was right behind it.
Yes, that's right. But I think that's one of the cool things too, is that obviously like from when I went to Science North as a kid, like it's changed a lot, and there's a lot of like fantastic new exhibits that are state of the art. But I think what's really cool as a parent is the things that were there when you were a kid, right? Like the bed of nails and the sprint track. So like when you get to be on the sprint track with your kid, trying to beat your kid, and then you're now the sweaty dad walking around after because you've done it 10 times in a row. There's something about that resonates with you, right? So
yeah, it's that shared experience. And when you have a shared experience built on a previous experience, that really deepens the formation of your memories as well. So there's a reason that feels so good.
That's great. I know that you already said that we'll be interacting with the whale at some point. So maybe this is something that we can't talk about just yet. Maybe it's part of your plan as incoming CEO.
So we have some big plans at being able to incorporate some augmented reality with our whale skeleton, but that's all I'm at liberty to say right now.
Okay. Well, we'll take that. That works. But again, that was another thing when I was a kid where you were just in awe of this. You've never, as a kid, like for a lot of people, like that's the first time you've seen something at that scale, right? And it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around that an animal like this could exist in the wild, right? So again, that's always something I go back to. And whenever my girls go in there, it's like we talk about the skeleton. But what I wanted to ask you is obviously, so we'll park the augmented reality whale skeleton for now, but as incoming CEO, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you have planned and you can't share everything, but can you give us maybe just an overview of what your vision is for Science North now, taking on this role as incoming CEO?
Yeah, I mean, one of the really cool things about sort of coming up through the organization and being someone who was part of the team already is we just launched a really great strategic plan like a month ago. And so my big vision is just really implementing and overachieving on this strategic plan that we've already developed. And we did it in a really different way. So we created, as scientists, we created catalysts in our strategic plan. And these are elements that will we have all these big ideas. That's literally what they're called in the plan, big ideas. And they're supported by these catalysts. And so the catalysts are things like innovation. So it doesn't matter sort of which area of the organization we're working in, they will be supported by an innovation strategy. And that's getting everyone on a shared vocabulary around innovation, making sure we're resourced around innovation, celebrating ideas that maybe don't make it to the floor, and really shaping the culture of innovation here at the Science Center. Because that's great subject matter for what we're here to talk about today. So for me, as the new CEO with this great strategic plan, it's about supercharging these catalysts to better serve our visitors and our communities. We don't do the work that we do alone. Yourselves are partners with our organization as well. And I'm a real believer in diverse perspectives and bringing partners around the table and collaborating, always gives you a better result. And so that's another area that I'm looking to supercharge as well, is how we bring people together to create, a broader community around innovation and engaging people of all ages and all across Northern Ontario with innovation, and just inspiring them to connect with, there is science in our everyday life, and we need to get them connected with it so they make better decisions, around things like health and climate action and sustainability. And we have all the tools. It's really about bringing people together and seeing what we come up with.
And here I thought you were going to say we're committing to a third snowflake on the grounds of Science North, but
well, funny that you say that. Not at Science North, but we are in a design phase right now, a schematic design phase, to build 2 new science centers in Northern Ontario. So one in Thunder Bay and another in Kenora.
Wow.
So not a snowflake here, but the appropriate shaped building up in Thunder Bay. And then an addition to the Discovery Center in Kenora. So we really do live and breathe not being Science Sudbury, but being Science North. And that's the next phase in our evolution. So bringing the great experiences that we do here up to Northwestern Ontario as well.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Then there's that sort of barrier of distance just sort of melts away, right? One of the sort of last things we wanted to ask you, since you mentioned it in your bio, is being a skilled mixologist and a pizza connoisseur, and obviously looking at it from a biology perspective. So what might be your sort of go-to mixed drink, and how do you make it? And then what is a secret to a great pizza?
Oh man. Well, we could have spent the whole time talking about this, so I'll.
That's
I'll
that's
do
the
my
Unlikely
best.
Innovators After Dark. That's a
Yeah.
different
Yeah,
that's
no
a different
kidding. I
podcast.
thought that was a different show.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think like most people, the pandemic certainly sharpened my at-home entertaining skills. And so my husband and I both, we love tequila. I wouldn't be as bold as to call ourselves connoisseurs, but certainly we do enjoy it. And like everything else, the secret is balance. So, you know, a great drink right now. I am crazy about a drink called the siesta. So it's tequila and Aperol, actually.
Ooh.
So yeah, if you bought that bottle of Aperol to make your spritzes
Yes.
and over the spritzes, mix it with tequila and some soda and a little bit of grapefruit juice. It makes a beautiful looking drink. It's called siesta for a reason, though, like 1 or 2 and you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but highly recommend that one. And then a pizza. So we invested in an at-home pizza oven, an outdoor oven over the pandemic, like a lot of people did. And I'm not ashamed to say I hopped on the sourdough bandwagon. Full COVID-19, you know, all of the trends, I did them all, including the sourdough. So the crust definitely is one of the secrets there, and like holy science. I had never done anything like that before. And when I learned how to do the sourdough, I thought that was pretty cool. I was the only one in my household though that thought that it was as cool as it was. And so, you know, good crust and high temp and good ingredients. We like them simple, but it's something people love. You know, it brings people together and they love to see the process happen. Just like what we do here, when people get to see, you know, we pull back that curtain on science and we show them that it is accessible and it is all around you. And it's something that everybody can relate to. Same for cooking. So I think that's probably why I love it so much.
That's awesome.
Speaking of ingredients, from a scientific perspective, of course, does pineapple belong on pizza? Settle this once and for all.
Of course it does. Science.
Yes.
Science. Of course it does.
I agree.
I think we're all on board. I mean, I think it does. Steve thinks it does, and clearly you do as well. So I mean, that's good enough for me. So the Unlikely Innovators is a pro pineapple on pizza podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. That needs to be in your description.
Yeah, it'll be in the liner notes for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Listen, Ashley, it's been so great to meet you, and I think it's safe to say, and Mike would agree, that the sort of future of Science North is in good hands. And we're really happy for you and for you taking on this position and guiding what is a sort of a jewel in our region into the next sort of era. So we'd like to thank you for being on the show today, and we look forward to seeing that strategic plan roll out and continuing to make those experiences happen for Northern Ontarians.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was a ton of fun. And like I say, we are not strong without our partners. So we look forward to working with the rest of our community, the great work that you guys are doing. And I can't wait to see what we do together.
Bluecoat in chief, Steve, that was the thing that I was trying to come up with earlier. So thank you for being much more eloquent with your words than I could. I wanted to share a Bluecoat story with Ashley, but I thought I would save it for one of these our outro. She had mentioned how the Bluecoats are like the secret sauce of Science North and the reason why people keep coming back and why you have such great engagement when people go to Science North. And I kind of wanted to shout out the Bluecoats because there was a time when, and some of the listeners may or may not know this, but Cambrian had helped, with the Go Deeper exhibit at Science North. So we'd put together some, well, actually you did more of this than certainly I could speak to, but in terms of the McLean Gallery at Science North, there's a lot of pieces
Dynamic Earth,
at Dynamic Earth that are either Cambrian R&D Center for Smart Mining project outcomes, or, some of the things that we fabricated, like the mine cage door. There's also a miniature version of Mike Comito in that McLean Gallery I was scanned, I was 3D printed, and now I'm in a glass case at Dynamic Earth. And so one day, I think I'd taken the day off. So it was the middle of the week and I had some time to kill, and I took Zoe to Dynamic Earth, and we were the only ones there. So like the Bluecoats were all over us because like they obviously needed to, to keep moving and chatting and engaging. Right. So they came over to us, and I, of course, was very familiar with this new exhibit because there were so many curated Cambrian things in there. but I wanted to let her do her thing. So she gave me the whole rundown as we kind of, and she's talking about the Center for Smart Mining side-by-side EV that, used to be in our shop until it went to Dynamic Earth. And then we arrive at the 3D printed items and she starts explaining, what's in the case and like who this person is. And at that point I said, I've got to stop you. That's actually me. And then I kind of explained to her why we were here and all that. But again, she did a great job, I think, because they all have to learn about all these new exhibits so they can talk to anybody about it, right? Little did she know she was talking to the actual 3D printed person, but nevertheless, she did a great job. But I did have to let her off the hook at the end just so that she didn't, she knew who she's talking to. So.
Yeah, and I wonder who she ended up having a better conversation with, the 3D printed version or the real version of you.
Well, the 3D printed version of me doesn't talk back, so I think
yeah.
I think probably that version. But
I can't believe she didn't introduce the little figurine as the co-host to the Unlikely Innovators. I guess we're not at that point yet.
One day, well, I mean, I think maybe with Ashley's support after, and actually I should say this too, because we don't get this lost, that this was Ashley's first podcast appearance. So.
Yeah.
So I hope.
Well, and I did want to. Yeah.
We've either set the bar really high, or she's going to walk over it with her next booking.
Yeah. No. Exactly. I think I did want to mention though, because after we cut, she did have a really interesting tidbit about how her journey sort of relates to the Unlikely Innovators. As a biologist, she was actually a marine biologist, and one of the first jobs she had was studying orcas, and that required a lot of time on a boat. And she realized pretty quickly into that journey that she gets seasick. So the point of the story was, had she not been seasick, she could still be a marine biologist. But you never know what kind of curveballs life throws you. So she likely wouldn't be the CEO of Science North if she had made out okay on those boats. So we're glad that happened.
But listen to this though. What is even more unlikely is that, despite not being able to pursue a career in marine biology and studying whales, she works at a science center in a landlocked community that just happens to have a whale skeleton hanging from inside the building. Again, it's not an orca skeleton. I think is it a fin whale at Science North?
I don't know. What's a fin whale? I've only is it a blue whale?
No, it's definitely not a blue whale.
Is
anyway, Ashley's probably yelling at us listening to this, being like, it's not that kind of whale. But anyway. I thought that was interesting. Maybe it's ironic, maybe not. Maybe I'm probably
using right whale.
Maybe it is a right whale. I'm pretty sure they're a
baleen whale, like from Finland, like they have saunas and stuff.
Yeah, I think we're this is the part of the show. No, but we will not Google it live like we did a couple episodes ago with Casper the Friendly Ghost. But before we do go, Steve, what is your go-to summer cocktail? Ashley shared one with us that I think I'm going to try now because we are in the middle of the Aperol Spritz craze. I am also a tequila fan, so I think that Siesta sounds great. But what are you imbibing with these days?
Yeah, well, I was, as you know, I make beer, so I've been drinking a lot of beer. But I think for a while, ever since we went to the Greek festival a couple of years ago, we were given these really weird glasses that are Metaxa glasses, and Metaxa is a Greek liqueur. And for a while, and now back again, we're making Aperol infused Metaxa Sun Tonics, which you guys can Google. I'm not exactly sure. I think it does have Aperol and a lot of orange in it, but mixed with Metaxa, which is really good. So we've been having Metaxa Sun Tonics. So look those up.
I am going to look it up, but I will say to the listeners that I was right. The whale at Science North is a fin whale.
So you did look it up while you were supposed to be listening to me because you asked me a question.
I heard everything about Metaxa glasses, and you're in the Aperol phase as well. But I had to confirm this. It's the second largest species of whale on Earth after the blue whale, of course. So
what's your favorite? What are you drinking these days?
Well, last summer, again, you asked me these days, but last summer I was big into to Mexican mules with, tequila and ginger beer and not ginger beer, sorry. No, it was ginger beer.
Yeah,
tequila, ginger beer, and a ton of lime juice. This summer, I would say that we're partaking in the Aperol Spritz for sure. But again, I just a Negroni for me in the summertime is unbeatable. Actually, year round it's unbeatable, but it seems like these days after work on a Friday, you can't beat it.
Yeah. Aperol has such a beautiful color too. Right?
Yeah.
They make a beautiful looking drink. So the cool thing about the Sun Tonics are they came with these little shot glasses that sit on the side of the cup. And when you pour any liquid into it, they have a light, so it actually looks like a sun on the side of the glass. So
I feel like you and I have talked about this before.
yeah, it's kind of my go-to. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Anyway, I'm off to go to the LCBO. No, it was great to have Ashley on.
it's actually 9 a.m. Jesus.
Yeah. Calm down, Steve. Yeah. No, but it was great to have Ashley on, and can't wait to see what she has in store for Science North.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us on Unlikely Innovators. We'll be back next week. And thanks to our guest, Ashley Larose.
The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Comito and Steve Gravel. Presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.